Alright, everybody. I know I've spoken about most of this before, but now that the tests are done, I may as well put it all into one big discussion in one video to talk about the end of the Xiangqi game field testing portion. So here's what we have to work with. Old Shang, it had lions, the ramparts, and 3 reinforcement pieces. It turned out that that density of pieces with that much tripping over themselves, even with the ramparts, didn't feel like Xiangqi. Not because it caused the pieces to trip over themselves development-wise, the ramparts fixed that part, but because it created too sturdy of a defense. So you couldn't infiltrate Xiangqi, and vice versa, Xiangqi still didn't have the tools to properly infiltrate the enemy army. Alright, so we've been over that. Second part was Tomato's Xiangqi test, which had 4 wins, opening salvo, laming, and hero's charge. Now, 4 wins was the rule set that prevents diagonal attacks inside of Xiangqi territory, and then they gain a forward 1 square attack as kind of compensation, so you're still able to use your pieces for attacks, just not the same way. Opening salvo, which was the ability for the army to kill enemy pawns and pawn line to create gaps at the start of the game before you even play any moves, so that there's an infiltration spot on the enemy army. Laming, which was enemy jumping pieces such as knights still get blocked in some way when attacking Xiangqi, and by extension leaping, which was the ability of horses to jump enemy pieces that aren't yours, and hero's charge, which was a while on the battlefield it's able to attack more effectively. And we ended up, now that I'm looking at this, I'm going to undo this one, because I just got a realization that it's kind of curious to me. Something I just want to know. Yeah, I'll take those 2 off of the red list. So, the testing isn't done. I still have one more round to do, but we'll still talk about it. Next, so were the lions an effective strategy for combating the balance issues? Yes. Were they good as game feel? No, because they blocked the enemy from having infiltration squares. So between lions and 4 wins as a solution to the diagonal problem, 4 wins wins. Boom. Lions no longer worth testing. 4 wins is now in. Opening salvo actually did succeed. Laming did stay as well as kind of an extension of 4 wins, but hero's charge did not pass. And the reason hero's charge didn't pass was it altered the Xiangqi army too much. We cannot buff their pieces, the pieces themselves. Which is why I'm turning these back to red. Because even though I'm curious about it, game feel-wise, I think it still is true of the Heavenly Salvo. So Heavenly Salvo was this idea where either the king or cannons would have some way to free kill, just pop a piece mid-game along a rook line. And it has the same issue as the other stuff, where it alters their army too much to do that. And you can have that argument about leaping as well. This sort of idea that, oh, well, now you're letting the horse jump, so what's the point? You know what? That's kind of fair. But I don't think the pros outweigh the cons in that case. So for leaping, don't think the pros outweigh the cons. That's a lot of words to say nothing, Roland. So Heavenly Salvo fundamentally would change the mirror in how you behave with the normal Xiangqi pieces. Laming and leaping does not do that. Furthermore, leaping, we've tested recreates Xiangqi tactics against pawn structures. Because it can still jump, it can still do the types of things that you need it to do. And particularly against the enemy king, it ends up, even when there's pawns involved, able to restrict the enemy movement of that king by one more piece, and therefore recreate mates and tactics that normally you don't need to jump because the Xiangqi king is weak enough and doesn't have that diagonal move and capture. But against the chess king, that diagonal move and capture ends up being countered by your ability to jump over their pawn line. And it ends up almost 1-to-1. So because it recreates Xiangqi in spirit despite the alteration, it's a good thing. Heavenly Salvo, on the other hand, does not recreate Xiangqi in spirit. It is just a pure numbers buff, and it changes how pieces interact. Therefore, we are not including it. Elephant preparation is just the ability to move elephants inside of your territory at the start of the game. And I'm not gonna lie, it's a funny idea, but those 7 squares being elephant squares is fundamental to Xiangqi's strategy. And altering the king nexus, which is the 5 pieces that really together make up the Xiangqi king, is not something I want to do. So we're not going to. Calm before the storm. Nothing can die for the first 5 turns. Attacking things during the first 5 turns with cannons is just part of Xiangqi. We can't remove that. Alright. 4 wins plus rook plus cannon. We were testing more reinforcements still while only implementing 4 wins. Turns out that we don't want to give too many reinforcements. This is still on the table, though. As is, if we go back to this one, the dragon. The dragon, being just a chariot plus horse on the same piece, is actually viable as an option, which I wasn't expecting. So it turns out that as long as it doesn't get in the way, as in, like, you don't drop it onto an open square, but rather it's Sarawon gated in like our back rank reinforcements currently work. It's kind of just fine. It isn't a Xiangqi piece by default, but I'm sure Xiangqi players aren't going to mind having this power piece, right? It's just going to be like, oh, I get a dragon, hole, or a banner. Ooh, I actually like the bannerman better as conceptually, because on one hand, dragon, China. On the other hand, yeah, I'm a white guy in the US saying that. I should probably name it after the thing that the most similar piece in a Xiangqi variant is, and just call it a banner. Because then, sure, it's weaker than the actual banner from Manchu, or is it Manchu chess? Yeah, Bannerman's chess. Bannerman's Xiangqi, sorry. But, you know, nerfing the banner but still giving it in spirit and all of that, it feels more genuine to the culture of the game than just calling it a fucking dragon. So it would be called a banner. Alright. Or just a bannerman. Bannerman. Alright, the enemy titan being locked in the palace. Alright. So this would replace leaping, specifically. So instead of leaping, we would turn the enemy king essentially into a Xiangqi king. And probably the final form of that would include giving them guards and elephants. So you block the enemy king in a palace, you turn it into a Xiangqi king, you make it have guards, and you make it have elephants. Alright, fine. But now you are significantly altering the shape of the enemy army and doing it in a way that has tons of downsides. And even if it worked, even if it felt really Shang-Chi-like, of course it does. You're changing the enemy army in that way. You may as well just change the rest of the army to just be Shang-Chi too. See, it's a slider, and we can't quite push that close. And the rules of implementing it halfway, rather than just making you play Shang-Chi, is really complicated and long, and the complexity gets too high. So even if it worked, there's not enough pros to pay the cost of implementation. So we're not going to lock the enemy king in a palace. Alright, that's it for the game feel tests for Shang-Chi. Hopefully, well, here's the key points. We now have, between back rank promotion and frontline promotion, we have, or not promotion, backline reinforcements and frontline reinforcements. Apologies. We now have enough ways to tune the balance of it now that we've achieved the right game feel. And the game feel being laming, 4 wins, and opening salvo. Between those, always being in some kind of effect, not completely always. Opening salvo we don't use against certain armies. And then frontline reinforcements we don't want to use. If we can, we want to use opening salvo instead, but we can't always. It just depends. But right now, we have enough dials to tweak that we can play with it. And the dragon is totally viable. Or the banner. I'm going to start saying banner. I'm going to write it in all caps next to dragon. Dragon renamed Bannerman. Jesus. All right. Is there anything else I need to talk about with Shang-Chi? No, there's not. With this, we can start doing Shang-Chi balance testing with the current rule set and figure out if it's too strong, too weak, or whatnot, and what have you. And that being said, that now means that we are in the stage where we would like people to start testing various opening ideas for the Shang-Chi and Shang-Chi matchups. Because of the way this particular army fits into everything, we will have to do some surface level balance tests against every other beta battalion before bringing it to beta, but only a small amount. We're going to do most of it against chess, and then just a little bit to figure out some tweaks and hopefully get the position right. I will do that when I have free time between whatever else I'm doing this semester, as well as part of the beginning of summer when we're doing other stuff. That being said, I do also need... I want to do another 2 balance tests, 2 to 4, with twin suns at some point, maybe? I hesitate because you have to call it done at some point and then just wait until you implement shit. But, you know. Actually, I'm just going to ask my player base. Because all of them have a good idea of where they think Twin Suns is. Yeah. Alright, we'll see how it goes. I may not need to do a balance test to implement a small nerf.